I'll try to spread it out so we
I'm
can get
Sharon
close enough.
Cooper. I'm from the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Foundation. I am interviewing Frederick A. Schubert. We are at Bellevue University. Go ahead, Fred.
Hi. My name is Fred Schubert. I'm 77 years old. I retired from the Air Force about 35 years ago and enjoying my life. Recently lost my spouse about 15, 16 months ago, but I'm going to be fine. I grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota. I was born in 1945. My father was a nurseryman. I was the youngest. He was the youngest in his family, and I was the youngest in my family. I had 5 older siblings. They're all passed away because they were older than me. Growing up, I worked for my father for a few years. I had other jobs. After school, I went to work for construction companies and fast foods. You couldn't really get a good job at that time because of the draft in the Vietnam era. I did attend college at a couple of schools in North Dakota, but because of the draft, my father died, my mom died in 1960. My dad passed in 1966, when just after I'd gotten out of one of my colleges. So I got deferred for a year before I was left for the service. I was administrator of his estate in 1966 to early 1967. But I joined the Air Force on March 28th, 1967. Went to Fargo on left for Fargo on Easter Sunday and got into the Air Force the next morning. We went to Amarillo for basic training because at that time Lackland Air Force Base had a breakout of spinal meningitis, so all basic training was transferred to Amarillo Air Force Base for the time being. I got out of basic training in May 1967, was transferred for technical school at Shepherd Air Force Base. I went into medical helper school and graduated from there to, I was able to get into medical supply school. It was a tough road to hoe because you had to get really good grades. So I excelled at med helper school, and I got my grades and I got into medical supply school. And it was a good experience. Taught me a lot of things about record keeping and working in the medical supply system. When we got out of there were 9 of us in class. We had 9 assignments. I chose Mountain Home, Idaho, which everyone else kind of was afraid to take because they thought it was going to be a desolate area, but it ended up great for me. I was able to go home to Bismarck and marry my girlfriend, and together we went to Mountain Home, Idaho. Mountain Home, Idaho actually was a great assignment. When I got there, we had a lieutenant, master sergeant, tech sergeant, and 3 staff sergeants. And I fit in. I played sports there for the hospital. And the master sergeant, Sergeant Joseph Harvey, was the first minority person that I had really been close to. But he was a black young master sergeant, and he was very nice to me. He was like my father. I was close to him until he passed a few years ago of cancer. Sergeant Gooden was a tech sergeant. He still is alive today. He lives in Kentucky. We went to visit, my wife and I went to visit him about 7 years ago. But there were 3 staff sergeants, and shortly after I got there, one got transferred to Alaska, one got out of the service, or two of them left the service. So there were only 3 of us left, and the master sergeant and tech sergeant told me to keep my eyes in the record books, in the records, and make sure that all the records were processed accurately, which I did. The master sergeant and the tech sergeant delivered supplies. They took their shirts off and they just carried supplies throughout the hospital. I mean, it's like, it amazed me, but they respected my ability to get the job done. And later, help arrived. We got a tech sergeant, a staff sergeant, buck sergeant, and 3 airmen to do the job that just the 3 of us were doing for about 6 or 7 months. So we got her done. My oldest son, Jay, was born the following spring, or well, he was born actually late summer. But on the day he was born, when my wife was in the hospital, the squadron commander came down and said, Airman Schubert, you've got base detail this week. Well, I reported for base detail and picked up paper for a few hours and told the supervisor that I'd like to go back to the hospital and visit my wife, and because she's delivering today. And he says, your wife's in the hospital delivering your child? Said, we don't want you here. Go back to work. You know, go back home and take care of business. So I just reported back to work in my job because I love doing my work, and my wife was in the same building, so went to see her a few times. But I did earn the respect of my supervisors and my peers because I really liked to work hard and I was good at it. But the time came when I felt I needed to go to Vietnam, so I volunteered, and I left the end of September, beginning of October. I went on leave. I took my family to North Dakota, where my wife stayed with her father while I was gone. I went to California, got on a plane and flew to Saigon and went to my base. It was kind of shocking, but I kind of knew what to expect. I went to work with a lot of good people. We had good camaraderie. The officers in charge respected us. They knew that we had a job to do. They let us do it. And the people over there in Cameron Bay, where I worked, they knew their jobs. They worked hard, and it was a really good experience. I met a lot of people. Some of those I still associate with today. My roommate Ed Schober lives just outside of Cleveland. We talk on the phone. We send emails. He's just a good friend. After my tour in Vietnam, I was sent to Selfridge Air Force Base, just outside of Detroit, Mount Clemens, Michigan, and I was only there a short time. I worked for a great Master Sergeant, Master Sergeant Richard Frink, and there was Lieutenant Caldwell we worked for, and there was another first-termer there that was getting out of the Air Force. My job basically was to lead detail people from the squadron and haul supplies to disposal units while we closed down the hospital. and that was my job for about 4 or 5 months. Sergeant Frink became a really, really good friend. Unfortunately, he died of cancer a few years later. But we respected each other, and the captain just, let me go, and basically it was my job to haul everything out of the hospital and close her down. So I had a choice assignment from there. I went to Hamilton Air Force Base in the spring of '71, and my wife and I drove to Bismarck for a vacation for a couple of weeks, and then we drove on to down the San Francisco area where Hamilton Air Force Base was located. I experienced there I guess the beginning of some supervisors that I really didn't get along with. Tried to work hard, but they just didn't agree with them sometimes. But I was there for about a year, and I was able to get a base of preference assignment to Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota, which was close to Bismarck, and got to work there. And there was a Sergeant Hansen there, a Master Sergeant that was getting ready to retire. I had a good relationship with Sergeant Hansen. Played fast-pitch softball and started officiating sports in my off-duty time. Officiated softball and basketball and flag football, tackle football, volleyball. Did just kind of enjoyed my off-duty time. We were there 3.5 years and met all kinds of good people. Ended up in 1975, in the spring of 1975, I got an assignment to Germany, Wiesbaden, I believe. And the next month that assignment was canceled. So about 60 days later, I got an assignment to Greenham Common, a dispensary in England. And so I did all my processing, and the last day of my out processing, I go over to finance to say goodbye to all my friends that I had known through sports. And a friend of mine says, Sergeant Schubert, I've got something here for you. He says, oh, your assignment was canceled. I said, oh no. He says, you're actually going to Spain. So I had to, reprocess and get the overseas accompaniment from my family, and so that took a few weeks. But anyway, I was off to Spain in this fall of 1975. We went to Torrejon Air Force Base, and wow, what a nice bunch of people were there. There was a Chief Master Sergeant Walter Baker. Wow, what a nice man. Captain T.K. Jones was there. A pleasure to work for. I worked in the warehouse for a few weeks, and then they sent me to stock records. I worked in stock records, and I was pretty good at it. I was going along pretty good. I got in a terrible car accident on the way to work one day. Had facial injuries, had a frail chest and broken hand and whatever, but I was injured severely. It took me a few weeks to recover, which turned out to be a few months to recover, but I was able to work within a couple of weeks and worked hard, got the job done, and we loved Spain. It was a good place to travel. The people were there were just fantastic to work with and work for. I was there from 1975 to 1979. When I left Spain, we came to Offutt here in Omaha. I worked at Offutt from 1979 to 1985. Again, learned a lot. Made Master Sergeant here at Offutt. I was able to work with good people. Was here until January of 1985 when I was reassigned to Vandenberg. They were short. Their superintendent was retiring, so made the trip out there. My family stayed here because the schools out there weren't as good as the schools here in Nebraska, which that was a good decision. So I went out there and they put me up in a senior NCO barracks housing, and I loved that assignment. It was great. It was a challenge. Vandenberg Air Force Base medical supply was not the worst in SAC, but they were struggling. I got there and had some good people. We sat down, had a meeting, and I explained to the people, we're in this together. Let's just work hard, get the job done, and we will improve. And we did. We went to the top, one of the top 5 accounts in SAC. SAC headquarters loved the job that we were doing. Made some good friends at Vandenberg. In the fall of 1985, they needed some help in Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming, F.E. Warren Air Force Base. Their leadership had retired, so I went up there temporary duty. I was supposed to go up there and just close the fiscal year in September, so I drove up there Labor Day weekend. Got there, and it was a struggle. They needed leadership. They kept me there I was supposed to be there the month of September, but I actually left to go home for Christmas in Nebraska. So I left there just a couple days before Christmas and spent Christmas and New Year's in Nebraska. Then I drove back to California in January, back to Vandenberg, and spent the next 14 months before I retired. I retired in the end of March of 1987, but I actually took 60 days of terminal leave and came back to Omaha early. And since I retired, I worked several jobs. I worked for Sherwin-Williams Paint Company and learned how to tint paint. Went to the University of Nebraska Medical Center, worked in medical supply for about 5 years, and went to work in a couple of packing houses for the next few years, and ended up, I worked for a casino for about 6 months while my wife and I had purchased another home. And while we were I had to finish the basement, so my friend and I finished the basement. I was working graveyard shift at a casino for a few months, and ended up, when the house was finished, I was driving home from work one day, and they said that they had an opening at TD Ameritrade for a security officer. So I went to work for TD Ameritrade for about 10 and a half years and retired, and had a lot of different jobs, a lot of different experience. I learned if you work hard, you can be respected, and you can move on to greater things and a better life if you work hard. So I'm happy, I'm successful. Unfortunately, my wife passed last year, but through my Air Force experience and my friends and all of my military people that I still have friends that I'm in contact with almost every day all over the country. I probably have a couple dozen that I maintain close contact with. And being in the Air Force has made me a successful person. So I'm very, very happy, and I'm lucky. I have military friends, and again, I'm very successful because of the U.S. Air Force. And all my gratitude is with them. So thank you.
When you decided to go into the Air Force, what kind of comments did you get from your parents and your brothers and sisters about the idea?
Well, my mom had passed when I was a youngster, when I was like in junior high school. And my dad kind of wanted me to go to college, so I did go to college for a couple years. And he passed away. He had a heart attack 2 days after I got out of my last quarter, because I was getting ready to get drafted, and he passed. So our attorney got me a stay or a deferment for a year so I could be the administrator of his estate. And so a year later then, I joined the Air Force. I was in close contact with the recruiting sergeant. I had known him when I was in high school, and every time I got a notification, I would take it to him, and he was guiding me through. And I was supposed to be drafted like the 3rd of April, and he got me in the Air Force the 28th of March. So I think the Air Force really helped me. I got a job in medical supply that I don't know, working in supply really helped me. I learned in Vietnam, my boss has told me, these people just aren't ordering supplies. They're ordering things that they need. You know, we supply in Cam Ranh Bay, we supplied all the bases and all the dispensaries in Vietnam. And my last few weeks that I was there, they let me work in packing and crating. And so I had some Vietnamese working for me, and people would pull the supplies, we'd box them up, I'd put labels on them, I'd put them, take the forklift and load them on a flatbed truck. I didn't have any cargo straps, so I just used ropes and tied them. And I got in the tractor trailer and drove them down to the terminal so they could be shipped out. And the people from Sealand are the ones that transported all the containers, freight containers on ships and brought them in country. And when at the port in California, they would load them with an electromagnet. They'd pick these tractor trailers, they'd take them off their base, and then load them into the holds of the ship. Well, when they got to Saigon, they would take them off the ship or off the ship and put them back onto another rig and then haul them. Well, we got ours at Cameron Bay. We had our own port. So anyway, the people from Sealand came by one day when I was loading my tractor trailer, and I was getting in, and the guy said, how long have you been doing this? I said, well, just for a few weeks. He said, well, you're pretty comfortable with the tractor trailer. I said, oh yeah. Well, they offered me a job. If I would have gotten out of the service in 1970, I could have stayed in country and worked for Sealand, made a lot of money, but fortunately I was married and had a young son, so I stayed in the Air Force, re-enlisted, and but I enjoyed working there. I guess Sealand would have been a whole different life for me, but I enjoyed it.
Did you hold any jobs in between your finishing college and going into the Air Force?
Well, I actually didn't finish college. I only went for a couple of years because I felt at that time I needed to be experienced and a little more mature to know what I wanted to do when I finished college. So I actually, when I got back from Spain to Offutt back in 1979, I started attending Bellevue. It was Bellevue College at the time. I went there just to take Spanish because I was somewhat fluent in it. And in a couple of years, I got a degree in sociology, psychology, double major. And then I was sent to Vandenberg. When I came back from Vandenberg, I stopped by Bellevue University. And the guy said, well, Fred, why don't you still got some VA school left? So I said, well, what? He said, well, you only need 3 classes to graduate in political science. And so one was to write a paper, and the other 2 classes I attended. So I graduated again, I think it was around 1988, and with a bachelor degree in political science. And then I got out. I had retired from the Air Force the year before, so I just pursued other opportunities. I went to Sherwin-Williams, worked for them for a few months, and learned how to tint paint, and I was pretty good at that. And I had experience in medical supply, so I went to work at University Med Center for several years, and I left there and went to work in medical supply houses, and was able to be hands-on with supplies, supply industry, and I did that for several years and thought, well, let me try something else. So I worked in a casino for about 6 months, working security there, and then I went to Ameritrade and worked 10 years security there. By then I was like 65 years old, and Ameritrade moved to another location in the city, and I didn't want to drive across town, so it was a good appropriate time for me to retire. So, and that was about 2010, I think it was, around that time.
Do you belong to any veterans organizations?
I belonged to the VFW and the American Legion for a short time, but at that time I was still working hard, and I didn't have the time to be involved. So I haven't, but I'm considering the VFW again now. They have a small club here in Bellevue, but I haven't fully decided. My wife's gone now. But I have a cockatoo bird. That's my partner now. Had him. We've had him for about 21 years. He came out of the sky and landed in our backyard one day.
Wow.
And he's my partner.
So do you have siblings?
My family has been gone. My one sister passed about 3 years ago, and that was my last sibling.
Okay. Did you ever talk to her about your experiences in the military?
Bismarck, North Dakota is not a military town. There were a lot of Vietnam people that left Bismarck. We lost some. I still have classmates that are veterans. They're on my contact list. We talk occasionally. But my friends and I, we talk about everything. You know what? Not much military.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the military was a good experience. I got along with everybody, and we had good camaraderie. But for us, I'm 77. There's military stuff that comes up, current events that, with the military, and, there'll be an occasional comment, but the military experience, even in Vietnam, wasn't a bad thing for me. I guess the worst thing when I was in Vietnam, we used to play, we were off on Sundays. We worked in all, 6 days a week, but we got together and played softball on Sundays. And where we played was a helicopter pad. And we had to break up our game and rush over when a helicopter came in and carry their patient, whether, it was, just a minor injury or major injury. They're mostly Korean soldiers. And we would take them to the emergency room, and once all was that, we'd wash off the blood or whatever we got on us, and then we'd go play softball again. But that was the worst. The worst part of it was seeing young people that were destroyed physically. And, that was sad. But being a couple years older when I went in, it didn't hit me as hard. I guess, that was just me, but I look past it and try to stay positive about the whole thing. And
so have you shared that particular story with a lot of your military friends, a lot of your civilian friends? No one?
Not really. I have friends in the military, but that era is gone. They didn't treat us very well when we came back from Vietnam. But people are reaching out now and saying, thank you for your service, and but they didn't say that 35 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 45 years ago, when the people came back from Vietnam. But it's a different era today. People don't know how bad it was. There were a lot of drugs in Vietnam. I'm happy to say that that wasn't my interest. So I'm pretty healthy. I'm pretty positive. I have a lot of friends, and you know, if you're not positive, it's just hard to get along. It's hard to make it through the world today.
Is there anything else we should talk about that we haven't covered? Anything you're thinking that you left out or want to say more about?
I guess I could just sum it up by saying the Air Force was a great experience for me. It allowed me to, you know, maintain friendships, allowed me to work hard when I got out of the Air Force, and I was in the workforce for another, 20 years, and I don't know, I've lived a good life. I'm okay. I get friends everywhere. I have a friend in you. I'm successful. I'm happy.
Okay.
I couldn't.
Would you like to say what you wish more people knew about veterans?
For the most part, I can't speak for everybody, because there are those of us that were not as fortunate. There's, some veterans have been neglected. Some veterans want to be private. Again, not everybody is positive, but as a veteran, people have to realize that when a person joins the military and they don't fully understand what they're doing, but when a veteran joins the military, he's signing a contract and offering his body. He's offering his life in service to our country. And you have to respect that, if nothing else. That person, when he signed that contract, when he enlisted in the armed forces, he offered his life to our country. I've always loved my flag. I've always stood for the flag. I always loved our national anthem. I stand for a national anthem and salute when, as much as possible, salute the flag. You just got to respect the veterans. They offered their life. Many of our veterans gave up their life, and a lot of them are, the wounded warriors. They're suffering. If you have the opportunity to reach out, if you want to visit a military hospital, make arrangements with your congressmen or your legislators. Help when you can. A veteran always feels good when a person walks up and says, "Thank you for your service." Respect our veterans. They gave up a lot. So.
Is that done? Okay.
That enough?
Yeah, 39 minutes.